All right, happy Tuesday, everybody. And you're probably noticing that I'm wearing the exact same shirt that I wore or in the other video. That is because I'm making all of these videos or these first couple videos in the same day. So please don't judge me. Actually, since we're like quarantined, I definitely have worn shirts a couple times, and I think that's quite okay. Anyway, May 5th, it is Tuesday. Let's talk about similarity. Okay, so by the end of this lesson, you should understand how similarity can cause attraction between two people. You should be able to explain the similarity attraction hypothesis, and you should be able to explain the concept of assortative mating. And if you have really engaged parents who like this content or who are interested in what you're learning, you can practice on them and try to explain these things to them at the end of this lesson. If they get it, you got it. If they don't get it, you didn't get it. So you should talk to me and we'll figure out how to make you get it. Okay, so the first thing, we hear a lot of times this term like opposites attract, right? To describe how attraction works. But a social psychologist is much more likely to say that birds of a feather flock together, and that's a much more accurate description of attraction. So we have this hypothesis called the similarity attraction hypothesis. And quite simply, what it states is that people will form relationships, romantic and otherwise, like friendships and things, with others who have the same attitudes, values, interests, and demographics as them, right? So we are going to pick people that are like us in some way. We could see down below on the left, we have the three Abrahamic religions. So Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. And, even within those groups, you might see much more a higher incidence of connection between like a Jewish person and a Christian person than a Christian person and a Hindu person, right? This is not like a hard and fast. This is not to say that those groups cannot intermingle or talk or be attracted to each other. What this hypothesis is stating is that it is more likely for people in the same groups to connect to each other. So I want you to think about why that might be. I have a picture of the most beautiful place on earth, Washington State University in the middle. It's an instant connection when you see someone from WSU. You say "Go Cougs," they say it back, and you're already connected. If you're on the same flight, you'll probably talk more about what you studied, what dorm you stayed in, right? It builds an instant connection. Then, of course, we have politics, right? Where it's easier to talk to someone who has the same political views as you, especially in a really divided country. It's much more comfortable to have to be able to agree when you talk about things that are happening in our world. So that's kind of the basics of the similarity attraction hypothesis. So building off of that hypothesis is the concept of assortative mating. Okay, and this is specific to romance, right? The last one was general romance or friendships. This is specific to romance. Okay, so in romantic relationships, assortative mating is the process by which organisms that are similar tend to mate with each other, right? So we're going back to biology, evolution, the basics. So that would suggest that an individual is more likely to mate with someone who shares their features or interests just by nature of being able to reproduce the same types of things, being interested in the same types of things. But we can also think of decreasing conflict, right? Most people want to date someone who has the same interests and dreams and who can get our perspective of the world. So when we have these similarities, arguments are decreased, and that can cause people to get along much better. If you look at these examples that I have, the one on the far left, if you are someone that likes to play video games, and you're a guy and you find a girl that also likes to play video games, it's great that you like to play video games. It's even better if you like to play the same video game, right? Because then when it comes to spending time, you're not complaining. One person's not complaining about, oh, you play video games too much. They'll just play with you, and then you have that natural connection that keeps you bonded and together. If you have someone who likes to eat at the same place as you do, again, when it comes to talking about where you go to eat, you're not having this conflict and those issues. That's just an easy conversation. Oh, let's go to this place down the street that we love. Yeah, deal. Okay. And then lastly, if you think about like long-term future stuff, where you want to live becomes a big factor in assortative mating also. If you have a couple that one person wants to live in the city, the other person wants to live in the suburbs or the country, right? That's going to be a source of conflict. Whereas if both people want to live in a suburb, then you take that source of conflict away. So it actually makes the chances of mating are increased. If we want to talk about evolutionary perspective, the odds of mating with that person are much higher because you're spending more time with them, you want to spend more time with them, and you have less conflict with them. So let's look at some data, okay? So the census, which is happening, right, tracks all kinds of patterns in our population every 10 years. And what the census data found that the number of interracial marriages increased from 2000 to 2010, but it was a really small increase from like 7% to like less than 10%. And that was the increase. And that was the 2010 census. So we might see different numbers compared to now, but if we think about that data, it's showing us that for the vast majority of people, they are marrying someone who looks and sounds similar to them. With this idea of interracial marriage, I also want you to consider what family expectations go into who's choosing mates and how they're choosing a mate, and what generational beliefs are also in play when we talk about interracial marriage. Certainly, ideas about interracial marriage have changed from 1950 to 1990 to 2020. However, we still have some generational ideas and family expectations that come into play in that. But again, we can see that the data shows people are marrying people that are like them. There's also psychologist Marian Mori states that the reason why she believes similarity comes into play is because she says it validates our worldview, right? Someone who has similar beliefs as us that make us feel comfortable with our opinions, and it makes us feel like we're logical, smart human beings, right? If I'm saying something and we're having a conversation and that person agrees with me, I feel a lot better about myself, right? I'm like, yeah, okay, if they think I'm right, I must be right. So obviously you want to be around that person because you can affirm and confirm each other. The picture I chose is from Parks and Rec. This is Andy and April. Top, it says cooking is dumb. And then Andy says cooking is dumb. April says, I swear on this dead crow that I will never cook for you. And Andy says, I love you. Right? So they both agree that cooking is a stupid thing. They don't want to do it. And that brings them closer together. There's also a study that was published in the New York Times by Leonard and Quealy in 2015. And the data that they had said that people from certain regions of the US were more or less likely to be married by the age of 26. Okay. So on the left, we have Salt Lake City, Utah. So the study found that people who lived in the state of Utah were more likely to be married young, while people who lived in southern Florida were more likely to marry later in their lives. Okay. And so the question I want you to think about is, how might the similarity hypothesis explain these trends? Okay. What do you know about these areas? What types of people choose to live there? Think about religion, ethnicity, age, career type, right? All those different factors. Try to think about some ways that you might explain and how this hypothesis might apply to why people in these areas get married at different ages. And then as we think about it, right, it's all about perception. So we know that people are attracted to those who have differences from them. And in 1995, a study was done that stated that for some people, if they had a weakness in one area, maybe they were having struggles being assertive. If they saw someone who was very assertive, they might actually be attracted to that person who has a strength in that area. Because to them, they could see it as an opportunity to gain something, right? By being around and with this person, I can actually gain. I can actually become more assertive because that's a quality they have that I don't. We also have a study done by Baxter and West in 2003, and they found that most couples that are different are very aware of their differences. However, if they view the difference, if they perceive it as an opportunity to learn, then they viewed their differences as a positive instead of a negative, right? They said, okay, this person has completely different views on this to me. I can see myself learning from them. That gave it a positive twist rather than a negative twist, okay? And so we see that difference there come as well. So in conclusion, two people are much more likely to become attracted to each other when they are similar in demographic ways. So think of social class, race, and age, okay? Common interest, basic values. The task for you today is to ask your friends and or parents or family members, right? I don't care who you ask, but ask them how they met the person that they're with. Okay, if your parents have been married for whatever amount of time, ask them how they met their partner. If your friends, right, are in relationships, ask them about how they got attracted to that person. Pay special attention to, were they from the same hometown? Do their families have the same income levels? Do their families have the same religion, right? Try to kind of flesh out or work out some of those details and see if the hypothesis that we talked about in this video actually applies, and just write a reflection of that, and you can share that in the discussion board. So I look forward to reading on some of your reflections of what you discovered about your family and friends relationship.